Well, how would we get water to the machine all the way across the field? The most common thing is literally to put a ditch down the middle of the field. Open ditch. And this cart would have a pump mounted right on it with a diesel engine or a propane engine and also a generator. So it's totally self-contained. It pumps water out of the ditch, generates its own electricity to run the towers, and so you have a totally self-contained unit with one engine.
What size pipe?
Well, this would be a standard size pipe. If you're running a quarter-mile long line, it'll probably be 6 or 6 5/8 inch pipe. So you would hydraulically have very similar characteristics that you would with a center pivot. If the machine's longer, it would be bigger diameter. You know, the first few spans out could go bigger. If it's shorter, it could be smaller diameter, 4.5 inch or 4 inch, if it's a little short one. So it'd be extremely similar to the pivot, extremely similar to the pivot, as far as all of its superstructure. You just have this added thing called this cart that is running it. Now, the other thing would be to have a main line and valves every 600 or 1,200 feet down the way, depending on how long your hose was. If you got a 320-foot hose, you'd have to have a valve every 640 feet. And you would be able to go 640 feet, you'd have a valve right in the middle of that operation. So you'd have a valve here, and a valve here, and a valve here, so on. And every time it goes that far, you have to have somebody drive out in the field and shut it down, move the hose. Because it'll water so far, and then the hose will drag out to here, and you'll run out of hose, and it'll run the end of its run. So you have to be there to change out, pick the hose up from this valve, move it over to this one, and now the hose is sitting stretched out this way. Now it's going to move back till it gets to this point. Then we got to move the hose to the next valve, because the hose is only so long. We can only go so far before we rip the hose off the valve. So see, you do have some operational cost in man hours to babysit that thing as it's going across the field if you have valves on a main line operating it.
Which is the most common ditch?
As far as linear is concerned, most of the ones that you'll see in the Northwest will have a ditch. There's very few. There's very few. The biggest problem with the linear lateral is the fact that it's hard to get across the field fast enough and then get back and come back across it again. We have too arid a climate, and it's hard to get across those fields in appropriate time to get back and start over again. They're really much better where you're doing them for supplemental water instead of relying totally on it for a crop. I mean, we have to be dependent on keeping that crop irrigated at its optimum. Trying to grow potatoes under this kind of a system would be a real tough thing to do as far as your overlap of water. You know, you don't want to water across and then turn right back and water this way, and you're distorting the water. You get real heavy applications of water at either end. The middles get watered perfect. The middles turn out perfect. But in the either end, it might be 3 days before you get back there, and you're having to put on twice as much water than you really wanted during the time that it's sitting over here at the end and coming back again. So it's the uniformity of application gets a little screwy on you. So that it becomes less than ideal. It's great because it fits rectangular fields. And boy, there's no corners to lose, so that's a real advantage. But just the ability to time the watering becomes the real bugaboo on one of these systems. There is a little tiny one sitting up here at the air base. So if you want to go look at one, just drive, go out here, go up the road into the air base, and immediately when you get into the air base on this east entrance, there's one sitting in the field right there as you enter the field area up there by the air base. It's a little short one, 2 or 3 towers long, and there they have all the control in the world. They can get across that field in just a few hours, and they walk it back dry, and then go back across the field, walk it back dry. So that's ideal.